You're listening to the podcast of Iris Josephina. If you're passionate about exploring the menstrual cycle, cyclical living, body wisdom, personal growth, spirituality, and running a business in alignment with your natural cycles, you're in the right place. I'm Iris. I'm an entrepreneur, functional hormone specialist, trainer, and coach, and I am on a mission to share insights, fun facts, and inspiration I discover along the way as I run my business and walk my own path on Earth. Here, you'll hear my personal stories, guest interviews, and vulnerable shares from clients and students. Most people know me from Instagram, where you can find me under @CycleSeeds, or they have been a coaching client or student in one of my courses. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to this special of my podcast, Cycles Across Cultures. I'm so glad to have you.
I'm honored to be here and to discuss and share how cultures and how different traditions are specifically for menstruation and how people are still following specifically in India.
I can't wait to learn. So before we dive into all of that, can you share a little bit more about who you are and what is the work that you're currently doing?
Okay, so I'm Mehvish. I'm a functional nutritionist. I'm a menstrual cycle coach and women's hormone practitioner. So everything about menstruation, women's health. And this is something that honestly I did not figure out when I started working or when I started studying nutrition. This just happened as a course, you can say, like how I got influenced and the women that the people I was working with. And it was more like there's so much to do about menstruation, so much to know. And that led me to do courses about menstruation. It's like, okay, I want to do this. And it has also come from my personal experience. I haven't shared this before, but then before this podcast, I was just reflecting how much I knew about menstruation as a teenager. And I know I shouldn't be sharing this, but I'm sharing this because I was so curious as a teenager. I remember when I was in my 8th grade, and like my best friend and a lot of my friends started getting their first bleed. And I was very fascinated. We had this girl talk, when I'm going to get my period. And I don't know, I was a bit disappointed. I was eagerly waiting for my periods to happen. And what I did, I bought a pack of sanitary pads and I started wearing it just to see how it feels like. And I know this is something very funny, but I was just so curious that I want to know how it feels like. How are you? And for some reason, I did not put it the right way. The sticker side was on the not on the panty, and I was like, oh, I messed it up. Yeah. I remember I was just laughing on this. And I don't know, I feel like back then I was not even aware that I'm gonna take this as a full dedicated passionate stream of my career. I was like, I'm so happy that that curiosity has led me here to this path where I'm helping women understanding more and more, researching more about menstruation and supporting people and specifically teenagers to know more about their periods and connect with their uterus, connect with their bodies. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing that story.
That's funny, but yeah, I wanted to share it.
Yeah, and it also shows so much how we are so completely not educated. Like it's really not that hard to put a pad, but if nobody shows you how to do it, it's quite complicated.
Yeah, that's there.
Yeah. And can you share a little bit more about your background and the lineage that you come from?
So I'm based in West India, I would say, like Gujarat state. So I'm a Gujarati, as we say, and more I would say I'm a foodie and I'm a Muslim. That's my religion that I practice. And in my religion, it's again, if we talk about menstruation, there's a term called ghusl, which is cleaning, which happens when you're done with the period. So a lot of things which I even researched what happens in my religion. And this is I'm gonna say I'm a foodie, and this is what it's simply about: being into India, eating more food, being connected with your culture, with the roots and ancient practices, which is Ayurveda. And I think you must be knowing about it. So yeah, that's there, and that's where I come from.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I do know about Ayurveda, and I think it is such a rich healing modality that we can learn so much from.
Yeah.
And that also brings me to my next question. Like, what, according to you, is the role of ancestral healing modalities that are still very present in India, what role do they have in like our modern world? Like how do you see them like
Yeah,
blending and influencing each
interconnection.
other? Hmm.
Yeah. So there are still practices and I would say ancestral healing and taken from Ayurveda if we focus on which is happening. So for example, in southern India, which is the south part of India, when the girl gets her first menarche, like first period, they actually celebrate it and it's looked as much of an honor and like more of a celebration, and she's given more foods to focus on, like sesame is given, more coconut based foods, coconut oil or something, coconut sweet, more turmeric. I've also researched this and I know, like, for someone who's based in south India, like they give this turmeric water, and then when I asked the reasoning, what's the reason behind it, then explain that it's antioxidant rich, again something which anti-inflammatory, and you need to give the girl when she's having a first bleed. And I see like there's a connection with modern science and ancestral healing, where this is what we do as well, like seed cycling is there, giving more nourishing warming foods, and I see that the same kind of reasoning and healing practices is integrated when we do modern science and ancestral healing. And then the next part that comes, which is a bit controversial, but I feel like this is important, which is even observed right now, is menstrual seclurism. Like just,
Hmm.
give women more time, more resting, more rejuvenation, kind of a more time to reflect and have some time apart from people, from work. And in earlier times, this was again a reasoning from our ancestors and people who used to do this practice, is because they wanted to give the woman the kind of rest. Right now we have access to so many things, technologies, gadgets, which make our life easier, but back then it was more, I would say, hard work. Like for example, if you had to walk from one place to another, basically a temple as well, it was so far away. For example, wells were there, like to bring up water. So looking at all those perspective, they wanted the women to rest. But then there are few, I would say, people who are do not understand the reasoning, and they just kind of mock it, or they kind of just tell it, oh, women don't need to rest, like we know we don't need this. But then again, if we see from their perspective, there was always a reasoning behind all this healing powers. Then there's again in South India, we have this when the women starts of bleeding, the period phase which is there, we have this Darbha mats. Darbha is actually a kind of a grass, which is more like it has healing properties. So basically, they tell the woman not to lie on bed or not to sleep on the bed, more like you have to use the mat, because that same mat is used for yoga, for sitting, and that grass has some healing properties. It's more like very cooling, very warmth, it gives you that warmth, and it's just given that kind of rest and sacred kind of thing, that okay, fine, you can use this to rest and just be apart and reflect on yourself. And I feel that's beautiful, because if we see at little practices, there has been certain reasoning. And right now as well, when we combine the modern science, like is as coaches, we also tell women that you need to rest, you need to do some kind of like some light yoga and stuff like that. Don't do more of HIIT workout. There's a reason behind that. So I feel like that's beautiful, and there are still communities who are practicing it. So I think that's just wonderful.
Thank you for sharing that, and also for bringing up that some people misinterpret what they see and like give their own meaning without really, yeah, without really understanding why people do certain things. Because I believe there's always a reasoning behind it, whether people consciously know something or not. But this also brings me to a more like harsh topic, because I feel colonialism has played a very big role in how certain practices all over the world, but specifically now because we're talking about India, in India, that things just have been so misconstrued. Could you
Yeah.
speak to the role of colonialism, and specifically the role of colonialism in potentially destroying and misconstruing the preservation of these ancestral practices?
Yeah, I mean, like it has shaped the entire narrative, as we are talking about where the misinterpretation stems from. And I would say, like, I would not say it has been always been negative. There is a lot of modern science and everything which has blended in. But at the same time, there is a lot of vague talks. There's no much, I would say, not research, but not more proof or validation where it comes from. And when we look at the earlier times, again, look, as we are going from one era to another, there were differences back then, there are differences right now as well. But then again, there are certain, I would say, communities or people who just look at it from a very negative point of view. Like, I understand there is cultural preservation, there is heritage, and we have to honor it. And but then again, you cannot just ignore the fact that we are also moving ahead with modern science. For example, I like how you told me, like, this is how there are some people who just not, they look at it from a very negative point of view. I basically I do counseling sessions as well. So when I go in remote areas, there is more kind, I would say, mixed kind of population, where the elders, I would say, people who are from a very previous part of life, and they believe that practices, they believe that we don't need the mobile phones, we don't need this, we know we have to follow what we've been told from our ancestors and from. And I feel that has also stopped a lot of, I would say, growth that is happening. Because then again, they are, if we talk about specifically about menstruation, there are many remote, I would say, villages, remote part in India, which the women was only using rags or cotton cloth, not even pads, I would say, cotton, like some waste cloths. And because she's been told this is normal for you, there's no awareness. Because there are no people to educate them what is right. They've been told this is right and you have to do, and there's a lot of limitation. So when we go, it's very hard. I would say, like, they just, it's a blank face when we try to make them, and we have to use pads. They are not like in India. There is more, I would say, more, I would say, majority of people who use pads than tampons or menstrual cups. And there's a reason which I'll cover later. But then again, when I show them the pads and how you have to use, it's more like they just don't want to accept it, because they've been told this is wrong, or you have to just use it, the rags and the cotton cloths which we've been using, which is right and the correct way, passed away from generations to generations. So I feel there's a lot of gap, and the gap is would be built by awareness, more counseling. And there are NGOs, there are people who are doing this job to educate. And I feel that would be, it will take some time. I agree if we look from a practical point of view, but then there's always hope, there's always healing and hope that is happening.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I've definitely seen that when I was in India as well. I spent a lot of time in a very small village in Tamil Nadu. Um, but they eventually started their own like pad. Um,
I
yeah,
mean, this is also growing. There are a lot of see women who are making in very like small scale, I would say, women who are just doing it at homegrown kind of products. And it's good to know that it's happening, and it's just there are a lot of work to be done. So this is like a real life story and a lesson, I would say, to learn. And my grandmother shared this to me when I was more like as a teenager, and I had that kind of maturity to understand about periods. So we were just chit chatting. I got my periods, I remember, and we are just sitting. She was just telling me about that in earlier times there were no pads. We were made to use rags and the cotton cloths. And she started laughing. And I was like, why are you laughing? And she remembered that your aunt, so basically her daughter, she was not aware about periods, menstruation. There was no awareness. So that's what I'm telling you about. There was no awareness, no school talks, no friends were talking about that. She started bleeding in her school. And her best friend just started teasing her. And she just made a joke about it, that you've got cancer. Because just first instinct, she told her that you've got cancer. And she was so traumatized that when she came home, she was educated about period. Her mother, my grandmother, told her that this is normal, every woman goes through it, and she was like not having it. She took it so seriously, she had to be hospitalized. And there were doctors also trying to tell her that, ma'am, or this is normal, this is what a woman goes through. But then again, she was so traumatized that I'm having cancer, she started crying, and the whole family had to comfort her then. So I feel like, again, that was a joke, but then this is why awareness is important. If you like, even like girls who are there and teenagers, they are very smart, I would say, compared to people who are back then. They have that access to, again, technology. Girls talk, but then again, awareness should be a must. We should not take that as ignorance, that okay, fine, this is Gen Z generation or everybody knows about periods. No, still there should be a proper, not a missed out talked about menstruation, I would see. And I would feel that I'm going to educate my daughter on the same level before even that happens. I don't want
Mm.
someone, again, this is, I know this is funny, but a lesson to even remember that how awareness impacts a lot on younger minds as well. So this
Yeah,
happened.
definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so intense. And if awareness would have been there, like she wouldn't have had such a, yeah, traumatic experience. Like it must have come like a shock for her when her friend was joking about that. Yeah.
The
Wow.
same friend tried to comfort her that, no, I was just joking, but she's not having it. She's like, okay, I'm having cancer. You're just telling me to feel like, just not get me panicked, but I'm feeling it. I just know, and you guys are lying and all that stuff happened.
Oh, poor
Yeah.
woman. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else that you thought you forgot to share or that you want to add?
I think the black bag thing, like taking a bag is, it's again like not a necessity, but then again, like it should not be a black bag. That is my how I see it. If you're taking sanitary pads or tampons or menstrual cup, tell the chemist or tell the person that just give it to me like in a simple bag. Don't make it a black bag or a bag to hide it. And I would accept it as it is. And I would want teenagers and even girls who are going to purchase a pad, just do it that way. So it will be kind of a revolution, because I see this is happening, you just put a black bag. Okay, it's sanitary pads. We have to hide it and have to give it to you. I don't want that happening. I want people to embrace it. Okay, fine. I'm menstruating. I'm proud of it. I'm gonna accept the bag from the chemist that way.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking to this. And if we're talking about these more ancestral views on the body, what do you know about more ancient approaches to the cyclical body and also periods in India?
Yeah. So ancient approaches that we've talked about, like menstrual seclusion, is there. Also, there is this one thing which is also done, like practice in my family, not to take a bath during period days, like first 2 3 days. And there's a reasoning, again, a reasoning that comes like when you take a bath, it's more like it's more about not being dirty, but then you have to just that's the time you have to preserve your own healing, womb healing kind of thing, and resting, and you can take a bath later on. So there are even people, and I know families who practice this, not to take a bath from the head. You can take a bath, you can clean yourself up, but just to wash your head after your period gets over. And I've been told this from my grandmother as well. So I kind of practice it, and I don't know, like there is this belief. I don't have much research or data on this, but then there are certain reasonings and people who tell me that the reason why you don't have to take a head bath is because the flow would get scanty, or you'll have a very slow bleeding. And I'm not sure like how it is influenced, but then again, we need more research, and I don't see the connection there, like how it will actually directly influence the flow. But then yeah, that's the reasoning that they have. Another thing which I've observed is, it's not even a myth, but again, this is how we talk about how one thing gets interpreted to something negative. So not as an ancestral practice, but then this is very widely practiced in India. And this one myth that I get is very, very common. Don't take papaya or a pineapple during your period days. And the reason why, because it's a very warm food, and they have this enzymes like papain and bromelain. So we have they have this concept that if you take papaya more during your periods or before your periods, so you'll get the periods early, or maybe you'll have a lot of pain. So there is a lot of mixed reasoning. So, and I've got this like so many times when I go to school for menstrual awareness. And there is one girl who always asks me this myth that, ma'am, we've been told not to take papaya. If we eat a lot of papaya, we'll get our periods. Again, there's for certain foods there is a restriction, like cold foods, sour foods, like again it will cause you discomfort. There's menstrual pain that would happening. I have I'm not gonna say I relate to it or agree to it, because I don't believe a certain food would directly influence so much. We have to look at the perspective and the quantity. If someone is taking papaya the entire day, like morning breakfast, lunch, evening snacks, dinner, then it's gonna maybe affect you. You're gonna have some kind of reaction. But I don't see the reasoning, like if you can have just one bowl of papaya and you've been told no, don't take papaya before periods, or you'll get your periods or get menstrual pain. And that is where this gap is happening, because again, fruit is something which is, you require it, whether you have periods or not. And just telling the girl who's maybe a fussy eater, or she's avoiding fruits, to not have the fruits which are actually antioxidant rich, which has the vitamins and minerals. So again, the girls are not eating. And there's this another thing about iron rich foods, not to have iron rich foods during periods, because it will, again, more iron means more blood loss. So you have to avoid dates, you have to avoid prunes, you have to avoid pomegranate, beetroots. So again, if you see all the good foods which actually have to be taken, being told not to take. So I would say, like, there has to be a proper counseling, proper approach, and I would say proper, like, it depends on bio individuality as well. I'm so sorry for the back. Yeah. Like how it, person to person, it differs. Like if we look more into the hormone imbalance, I would not give the same advice to other girls. So I think a lot has to be taken into consideration before giving any generalized advice. So yeah, that's there. Have you come across any myth? Like I'm curious to hear from you as well.
In my culture or about India
Yeah.
specifically?
Anything like your culture, India, that you've
Um,
heard.
yeah, I think like a few generations ago in my culture, women were also taught not to cook while they were on their periods, or not to cook specific foods. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I remember my grandmother speaking about this. Like when we were on our periods, we couldn't cook XYZ, or we couldn't be in the kitchen for a certain amount of time. So this is definitely something that, that has like roots in every culture. Yeah, so I believe every culture has their like myths and rules and regulations about periods. But I'm curious, because there's definitely a difference between like pre-Christian ways of life and then post-Christian ways of life. I feel in my country that is predominantly Christian, a lot of the ways that we treat our bodies are informed by how the church looks at bodies and what we're supposed to be doing with our bodies, because it's very much the root of our communities. Like it's not like that anymore, but our ancestors were very informed by the church, and rules and regulations were made up by the church on how to live life and how to do things. So I believe that has a big impact. But then I also know there is a very big difference between the Christian way of looking at how we treat our bodies compared to maybe like a more pagan, earth-based religion or way of life that was existing before Christianity came to my lands. I'm still like diving into this. Like I don't know everything about it yet, but I do believe that, yeah, every culture at some point had a way to honor menstruation. And I personally believe that menstruation and the experience of menstruation potentially could have been like the first mystical, spiritual, religious experience of humanity, because it's very weird, At a certain point, you're suddenly bleeding. Like that must be something of meaning in some way. And humans give meaning to their experiences. So I personally believe that menstruation must have been one of these experiences as humans that we ascribed a certain meaning to that was not human, but like more divine or God, goddess, whatever. But that's my personal view on this. And I know before, we started this podcast, we also spoke about certain places, like actual physical places in India that are actually dedicated to menstruation, that are dedicated to goddesses that are bleeding. Could you share a little bit more about that and where they're located and what you found about these temples?
Yeah, so there's this one which is more, like, I would say, more popular. Like others are even popular, but this one is more popular. It is in Assam. It is called Kamakhya Temple. It is devoted and dedicated to goddess Kamakhya. So it is more like worshipped because she was like bleeding, and there's a special festival as well, which is called Ambubachi Mela, which is kind of a gathering. It's an annual gathering. And I would say it's even celebration of her bleeding. Plus, there are folk dances, there are artists, and there's a lot more happening in the gathering. And the temple is actually closed for 3 days during this period, and it opens the fourth day. And there's a lot of, I would say, belief, and there's this, I don't know how much of this is true, but then they believe that the goddess bleeds during this time more prominently, and the temple water turns red. And there's a very beautiful, I would say, sculpture of her with showing that she's bleeding, and it's very beautiful. You just have that goosebump. And there's another temple which is in Kerala, the Mahadeva temple. So again, it is dedicated and devoted to Lord Mahadeva and Goddess Parvati, and it is again a celebration and worship of her bleeding. Then there's one in Nepal, but I feel like the uh, more popular and the more kind of a huge celebration happens at Guwahati, Assam, and that's just fascinating. So I'll share you the link as well, so you can have a look. And how I think it just happened in June, the annual celebration, which was last June 24, 25. I don't remember, the dates keep changing, but it's very massive. It happens on a very massive level. And there are a few like more ancient temples which are in India, which are in remote areas. So again, there is no like on Google or site documentation, but you can just see like very remote, smaller temples, which are again like they have this beautiful sculptures and of the goddesses, and how the yogi temples, which are there again for the vulva and everything like that. So that's just beautiful. And it's just, I would say, like how people again in that part, the population or the community preserves the ancestral tradition, and it's been going on for years without any discrimination or anything. And I feel that's just very beautiful, where we honor menstruation as a sacred practice as well.
Mhm. I really love how that is just preserved, because this is not something that they started doing like 50 years ago. Like it's a really ancient honoring. Do you happen to know like when these temples were built? Like how
I
old
think it
they are?
was very old. I would say, I think thousands of years ago. Like every temple has a different history. So I think it's very old. Like somewhere like before even the 1800s or 1600s, very like I would say before the time, like before Christ, I would say, like these are that old. So I would say like the tradition has been going on for years and years from that.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really special. And it really shows how in ancient times there was a whole different experience and whole different meaning giving to the whole process of menstruation. And it's so beautiful that this practice has been preserved, even though a lot of the world has changed. Like we both know that there's also a lot of taboo around menstruation, but then apparently it can coexist
Hmm.
with these ancient practices that are like, no, we're just going to honor this blood and that's it. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So I love that. And yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share? Maybe your
I
like
just
personal view on these temples?
I've seen like not just the temples, but then because I just realized I've been doing this practice. So my grandmother taught me, and I've seen this is common thing that I've seen in all religions in India. Like mostly, like even the remote villages, when we were talking about the rags and like educating them and making them aware, there's this one female who came to me, is like sharing her experience, and she wanted to use the sanitary pad, and I had a very good question, that can we wash the blood before disposing it off, because the cows or some animals would eat it. And I just realized, and it struck me, that even my grandmother has taught me that because I usually use sanitary pads mostly during my period days. So when I was just a teenager and started getting my first bleed, she told me that always wash the blood little bit. Just don't throw your pad directly or dispose it off, because the animals would be there. And if they eat it or something, like if they even touch your blood, it's something that is viewed as sacred and not dirty, but as a view to respect the animals as well. You do not want the animals to eat or just have that kind of thing. So I think this is also practiced in a lot of communities, not just me and my family, like I've seen in remote villages. So I feel that's even more respected. Like we see that as a sacred thing, not just a dirty thing, but to respect the animals as well, would be in touching or maybe by chance come in contact with your menstrual pad. So that's there.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, you know, this brings me back to what we spoke about earlier, that things are so easily misconstrued and people project their own ideas like, oh, you have to wash it off. So probably it'll mean that it is dirty and it needs to be clean. But that's not the case. It's because it's so sacred that you don't want anyone else to touch it.
Yeah.
It's basically you want to reduce the sacredness of it so other people are not influenced or other animals are not influenced by the sacredness of it.
Yeah, that's there. Even I've seen that when we coming back to that myths thing, like people have taken it in a very negative way about touching someone who's menstruating. Like I've seen this a lot that, for example, a woman is menstruating. You're not supposed to touch the woman who's menstruating. And this was a kind of a practice, ancestral practice, where she was just secluded and a separate time was given. There are menstrual huts in India as well for the same purpose. But then there are certain, I would say the mindset also matters, and the way they think that, oh, okay, why you're being racist, or why being, if she's dirty or menstrual blood is dirty, and all that narrative starts. Why can't I touch someone who's menstruating? But the thing is, it's more rooted in the belief of energies. And when we about Ayurveda, as we're talking about the Vata, Pitta, the doshas, and there is something called as the energies. There's prana energy, which is upward energy, and all this energy concept which was there back then. And that's the reason they were told that, okay, fine, you have to be separated. For this is the reason she has a lower energy, she's resting, and we don't want someone to get in touch with her. But again, that was taken in a very different narrative and a very different mindset. Oh, you cannot touch someone who's menstruating. Is she dirty, or menstrual blood is taken as dirty? And I think that there's a lot of, again, mindset counseling that would take into place, a lot of perspective change that would take into place. But that's there, we cannot just, and I feel like that's the reason it will take some time. It's already happening in India, the menstrual revolution. If I see, I would not say it there's going to be a year or a month. It's happening. There is a slow steady pace. I see communities, I see NGOs. We are talking about the women who are making pads. It's already happening at some level, and it's going to be a change as well.
I love that. And yeah, I can definitely see that also with the pads. Like, I think I was in India in 2013. Like, that's a long time ago. And that was already when they were making pads from their local plants, like all organic in a little, like super tiny, like factory, everybody doing everything by hand with these like manual machines. So, yeah, I can totally see that things are shifting and changing for the good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you feel that people are like preserving the more ancestral practices? Like, is that something that is just, it seems to be that it's just embedded in how society is.
It's more about, I would say, comfort as well. And as I've told you, it depends on accepting new things. And for example, if I'm liking something for years and years, and it's just giving me comfort, I'm very used to it, I would be little reluctant to use something which is newer. So it all depends how open the community or the people are. And I would say more influences from the family. For example, if there's this woman who wants to change, then again, there's a lot of influence from family members, from a mother. It's going to be difficult, but then again, it will be great for a change. So when we go counseling, we do counseling sessions, and there's a lot of different groups. So usually the mother is also in the group, mother-in-law. So it's a lot of counseling the whole family as well. And again, it has to be very careful, because sometimes people take it in an insulting tone that, okay, fine, like that's what I'm trying to tell you. When we are trying to do menstrual counseling, it's not difficult. It's more about acceptance, that what you're telling, we have to be comfortable, or we have to be open to do that. And I see, like, and again, if we talk about the gender, like male gender, I've seen a lot of men as well who are very open, supportive, and helping their wives, helping their daughters, having an open conversation about periods and stuff. And I feel that is changing in India. Earlier times, it's still there. I would say it's still prevailing. So there's this hiding and hide and seek being going on in families. Like, okay, fine, if I'm menstruating, my brother should not know that, or my father should not know that. I just feel shy, or I just feel not good, like if he's aware. And I don't know, like there's a very hesitation that's happening. For example, in Ramadan, like if you see, there are memes going around this, or just concept on this, that if I'm not menstruating because I'm bleeding, like if I'm menstruating, sorry, I cannot fast. So my brother should not know that. And if he comes to know, is like he's gonna mock me. Why aren't you fasting? Why are you eating? So it's I think rooted around that belief that it should be more open. There should be open conversation. But again, it will take some time. Like you cannot just throw yourself on someone that you have to do this, you have to accept menstruation. It will take some more counseling and more acceptance on that comfort level. Okay, fine, it's gonna happen. That's it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and also acknowledging that it's a slow process. Like we cannot
Yes.
expect from people to, 180 degrees change their ways when things just have been the way they are for a very long time. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what is your, like, let's pull it like a little bit outward towards the entire world. Like, what is your vision for the cyclical experience and ancestral healing for communities worldwide? Like, what would you like to see?
I would see again, like honoring and preserving the ancestral ways, not, and I would not, I'm not someone who's gonna go out of the way and just push the modern science. I feel there should be a very harmony and balance of modern science with ancestral ways, and respecting the culture, respecting the traditions, and taking it forward. And I feel like if, for example, as I told you about the sesame seeds, if the girl who gets her menstruation and she's given sesame seeds, same concept we have is seed cycling. So I think I want to respect that, and I want to bring that link to make them aware that okay, fine, this is not something very different. This is also we should be doing, and just drawing those connections where people would understand and have that kind of balance. So I feel I see a world when, and I don't see just the women or the females or menstruators. I feel the whole family, and to even counsel and make them aware. And surprisingly, there are even more and more communities, and I would say, as I'm talking about genders, people coming forward to know about menstruation. Whether I'm going in a college, university lecture, there are even men sitting there, like brothers or boyfriends, just wanting to know about menstruation, how I can help her. So I feel like I see it as a whole body, not just differing it that only menstruators should be knowing it or only women should be knowing this. I feel that it should be as important as we have a textbook lecture, or this is an important subject that we cannot miss, I feel. And even starting from the schools, and I feel like there has to be this change. There has to be this subject on menstruation, not just one workshop. Because I remember when during my time, I just had one workshop on menstruation. We are just given a pamphlet, and there were no talks, and there was nothing where we could feel, or we could just go to someone. Okay, I know this person, I know this teacher, I can talk to about menstruation. I feel like it should start from there. The schools should be more, and I feel more and more people are doing it. I see the change as we are talking about. I see it's already been happening. There are more, I would say, seminars are happening. People are even coming forward to make you aware about menstrual pads, how are the different products you can use. And I feel like it's beautiful, and it's again like a menstrual revolution.
I love that. And it's yeah, the beautiful thing is that the vision that you're holding, you're already seeing it unfold. And I think in your country, you are like a very important person for that as well. So if people are hearing this and they want to learn more about you and your work, what is the best way to find you online?
So I'm on Instagram at the rate core health balance. My website is still on the process, and it will be live soon. But you can find me on Instagram, and that's the best place to reach me out. Core health balance, Mehvish Khan.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure to paste that in the show notes so that
Yeah,
people know where to find you.
yeah.
Thank you so much for enlightening us on
Thank you so
practice.
much for
Yeah,
inviting me. This was amazing, and this was like a wonderful experience. And I just feel that energy, and I feel like very excited to talk about menstruation with someone who's in the same field and hardworking and doing the same work. So very excited for this episode to go live.
Yeah, we need to support each other. Like in this field, it's still growing. Like the world is not fully on board yet. So I feel we need each other and support each other to make sure that we make this mainstream, basically. Yeah. Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, this wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Want to know more about me? The best way to reach me is via @CycleSeeds on Instagram. And if you heard something today and you think, oh my God, wow, I learned something new, feel free to share the podcast on your social media and tag me. Or leave a review or rating. In this way, you help me reach more people like you. Thank you so much.